Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and in this video I want to talk to you about a concept that's adding value first in all relationships. Now, personally, I was very fortunate to have a really great role model in my parents kind of with this concept growing up, and this is a concept that I just kind of naturally gravitated towards because of my upbringing. But guess what? It's a really great business principle, and it's something that will really take you far in the business world while also just helping you lead a much more fulfilling, personally fulfilling life. So this is kind of a melding of The Go-Giver, which is a really great book by Bob Burg that I highly recommend. It's a really good book on this topic. But the whole concept revolves around when you first meet people, you add value before you ask for something, or even if you decide to ask for something at all, right? So this is something that kind of I built up over time, and one of the key things that's helped Self-Publishing School grow so quickly is business development or affiliate relationships. So a question I get all the time is, how do you do this? How do you build these relationships where people end up promoting Self-Publishing School, sending you customers, stuff like that? And it really all comes down to this. So adding value first. Now, there's a couple ways that you want to do this, and a couple ways that I've done this personally. I mean, it's in the name, adding value before you ask for something in return. But a couple ways that I've done that is, number one, I did this thank you card challenge. So I think it was back in, maybe 2015. I wrote a thank you card every single day for the entire year. Now, I like to zig when people are zagging. So while people send emails, texts, stuff like that, nobody sends thank yous anymore. Right? So I would send handwritten thank yous. I had this little stamp that was like my face, and I would do a little bubble and I would say something, and then it would be a thank you card, and it was kind of like my personalized thank you cards, and I sent one every single day for the entire year. Now, you wouldn't believe the response that I got from this. I had people send me a thank you card thanking me for their thank you, right? I would listen to podcasts or anyone that I learned from or appreciated in my life, and I would write a note to them, and then sometimes I'd have them send me books and say, hey, you mentioned that you want to learn more about copywriting. Here's these 2 books on this. Like, no one gets thanked via mail, either via a thank you gift or a thank you card, and I like to send both of them. And so that really helps you stand out, be meaningful, and you're leading with value. You're leading looking at, hey, how can I help you? How can I give something to you? How can I help you just make sure that you're noticed, right? And so I just noticed over that year, not only did it help me build a lot of relationships with strategic partners, with friends, all that stuff, but it also, writing a thank you card every single day forces you to look for things that you're thankful for. Right? Every day I'm like, I gotta write another thank you card tomorrow. What am I thankful for? Who am I thankful for? Who can I write one to? And it really kind of builds that habit. So that's the first thing, is writing a thank you card, but then also just looking for other ways to say, hey, how can I add value to this person? You know, there's a quote, I remember it from my friend Neville, and he always talked about how people don't care about you, they only care about themselves. Let's repeat that. People don't care about you, they only care about themselves, right? So whenever I enter into any interaction, I'm always looking for, how can I cater to this person? How can I talk to them about things they like? How can I make sure I'm looking out for them? How can I really be interested, not interesting? Right? This is something I learned early on in Student Painters from one of my mentors. He said, be interested, not interesting. Most people in sales or just in life in general try to be interesting and get people to be interested in you by being interesting, but instead you should be interested in the other person. Right, so that's kind of the core philosophy or the core principle, is just being really interested in the other person, asking them questions, talking to them about things that they care about. Now, obviously, the big question here is, what do I do if I don't feel like I have anything to give? Right? And especially, if I feel like I'm a little peewee, like on the grand scheme of things, like, what could I possibly offer to this big time person, right? If you meet a celebrity or you meet, someone that you really look up to or you've learned a lot from, that can be the limiting belief or the thing that, might hold you back. And I got a great story on this. So I remember in church growing up, kind of our pastor, he talked about how you always have something to add to someone, and how everyone, we're all humans, right? We all put our pants on one leg at a time, and we all have unique needs in unique situations. And so I think it was TD Jakes or something at the time, he really wanted to get to know him, and he was at this conference, and what do you guess was happening? He was just getting flocked. And it's like the buzzards just swarming, trying to attack and extract as much value as possible, and hey, will you promote my thing, all that stuff. And so, he's just kind of getting flocked, and he just sat back and he said, he noticed that he was drinking coffee, and he went to pick up his coffee, and it was really hot, and it kind of burnt his hand a little bit, and so he wasn't really drinking it. And so he said, oh, got it, cool. And he went over and found a little, whatever the sleeve thing is that you put on the coffee, and then he came up and he said, hey, here, I noticed your coffee was a little hot, here you go. And he turns and looks to him and says, yep, pull up a seat right here at this dinner. And the message there was that he said, you noticed and you look to serve, not to self-fulfillingly kind of extract value. So that story's really always stuck with me, and that you can always find a way that someone needs something, or a way that you can add value either to them, to their family, to their kids, to things like that. And one last thing kind of I'll talk to you on this, on adding value first, is really how I approach any conversation, business conversation, strategic conversation, stuff like that, is the structure with which I do it. Now, I was actually just coaching up one of my team members this morning on this exact concept. So structuring the call, so he had a call with someone who's like a strategic partner with us, and he wanted to make sure it went well and all that stuff. And I always spend the first 5 to 10 minutes to talk about them. Right? I'll mention something that I remember from the last time. I'll ask them questions. If it's the first time I've ever met, I'm getting into like, what do they care about? What's their family? Where are they based out of? Like, I'm definitely, I'm not going into just getting down to business, right? Now, some people are very much just, hey, I get down to business. That's just what I do. I don't have time to shoot the breeze, all that stuff. And so I'm going to feel it out, right? I'm going to get on the call and notice that. And so then I might get down to business, but then everyone's human, right? Everyone wants to talk about themselves, about the things that they're interested in. So at some point in the conversation, I'll weave that back in, because I know what they care about is themselves, right? As Dale Carnegie says in How to Win Friends and Influence People, the sweetest sound that anyone can ever hear is the sound of their own name, right? So people really care about that. And so I'll try to weave it back. And of course, if I find out that they have kids, or if I find out they have this hobby that like they're really passionate about, or their family or something, I will ask them a bunch of questions about that, because I know that that's something that they care about. And guess what? In the process, I'll probably learn a lot, right? So I'm learning, they're feeling really good about themselves in the process. And yeah, everybody wins there. So that's kind of how I structure it. Then, of course, I'll get down to business, and then we'll have our conversation. And it's a pleasant conversation. We've deepened the relationship. And then when I'm sending them a thank you card, or when I'm sending them a gift, I'm trying to relate it to something we talked about. And if possible, I'm trying to relate that to their spouse or to their kids. Because obviously, for a lot of people, they have the business world out here, and they have their personal world out here. And sometimes they just siphon those things off. But I know that if I can get them to merge the two, then I'm truly going to build a deep relationship, right? So if I can tie in a gift that then their kids are going to get to play with, or they can give to their family, or it's food or chocolate or something, so the whole family can get it, can like experience the thing, then guess what? Now they're talking to their kids or their parents, or not parents, but their spouse about me, right? And so now this is kind of bridged that whole gap, where this is a meaningful relationship from a friendship and a business perspective, not just someone I do business with, right? And this is just kind of, for me personally, this is how I want to live my life. I want to do business with people that I care about and that I'm friends with, not just with people that are just on the business side. So I think this has been really, really helpful for me. And I also know that some of my biggest relationships, best relationships, and also just so happen to be some of my biggest strategic partners, I also know their kids. I also know their wife, their significant other, anything like that, because I've taken the time to build that relationship. So really the way I look at this, so there's adding value first, and then there's a second piece, which is on a conversational level, is if the other person talks more than I do in any interaction, then I'm winning. that interaction, right? And that is the measure of success for me, is did the other person talk more than I did? Now I remember learning this from a mentor back in one of my early jobs. And he said, if the other person's talking more than you do, you win, right? So that could be in business relationships, in friendships, in dating. If I'm going on dates, it's the same exact thing. I want her to talk more than I am, right? And then I'm winning that conversation in my mind, because people obviously love sharing about themselves, and I love learning about it. And you know, they always say they give you 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that you can listen more than you speak, and that's when you're going to be learning, right? So the last thing I'll mention here, 2 really great resources on adding value first in relationships, and then also on just, you know, building relationships in general. Number 1 is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Hands down, one of the best books of all time on this topic. And then number 2, and this is way less reference, but I think equally as good of a book, and it's How to Talk to Anyone by Leo Lowndes. Now, this is just, so my brother, I was fortunate enough that he gave me both of those books, I think when I was in high school. And so I listened to both of them, and then I listened to both of them back to back again in college. And then I listened to both of them back to back again a few years ago, right? So I just batched those 2, and it's just always a good reminder when I feel like I'm getting too much in my own head, or too much in how awesome I am, or my accomplishments, or whatever else. It's a really great reminder to switch that focus back onto the people that I'm talking to, and back onto the people that I care about. So that's it. That's how you add value first in relationships, and really my approach to building meaningful relationships inside and outside of business. I hope that you found this helpful. As always, comment below this video. Let me know what you thought, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. See ya.